I've charted 1,000 star systems for the coalition. Routine work. Scan, catalog, move on. But when our survey ship dropped into Sol space, the navigation computer threw an error, 2 gravitational anchors where there should be 1. I looked out the viewport. A yellow sun exactly as the records described. And beside it, a perfect sphere of light, humming on a frequency no natural star has ever produced. Humans built it. They lit a second sun centuries ago and never mentioned it. When we asked why, they just shrugged. You never asked. That's what they said. A species that only recently mastered fusion travel somehow built an artificial star, lit it, and simply forgot to update the galactic directory. For 6 months, coalition scientists have pored over every scan, every gravitational ripple, every impossible frequency emanating from that perfect sphere. The engineering defies everything we thought possible. But the more we study it, the more one question eclipses all the others. If humanity could hide a sun, what else is out there? The answer, it turned out, was far more disturbing than anyone expected. Within days of the survey ship's report, the Coalition Diplomatic Corps sent an urgent inquiry to Earth. Not an accusation, that would come later, but a simple request for clarification. How did your species build a star? The response arrived in under an hour, a 6-word message from the human delegate. It's not the only one. The chamber went silent. Not the only one. Within 48 hours, the Coalition Council authorized a full spectral sweep of every system within 50 light-years of Sol. They found the second artificial star 3 days later, orbiting a brown dwarf in the Alpha Centauri system. Then a third, in Wolf 359. A fourth, in Lallan 21185. Each one a perfect sphere, identical in frequency, radiating energy at a scale that should have torn apart local spacetime. And each one placed precisely where human colonies had been established centuries ago, according to the records humanity had only just begun to share. The Coalition's chief astrophysicist, Dr. Valles of the Cree technocracy, called it the most significant engineering feat in galactic history. But when he testified before the council, his voice was not one of awe, it was fear. These objects are not merely stars, he said. They are containment reactors. The energy signature suggests they are holding something inside, something hot enough to vaporize a planet. He paused, and the entire council waited, breath held. And based on our readings, they are failing. The council chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions over one another. A few species with translucent skin flushed visibly darker with panic. Dr. Valles stood motionless at the center of the storm, waiting. Finally, the Speaker of the Council, an ancient Jithai whose kind had brokered peace for 6,000 cycles, raised a long arm. Silence fell. When you say failing, the Speaker asked, do you mean they are losing containment? Is there a timeline? Valles took a breath. We estimate the Sol star, the oldest of the ones we've identified, has less than 3 standard cycles before it breaches. The others are on similar timers, staggered by a few months. They were not built to last forever. They were built to delay something. The human delegate, Smith, John Smith, the same one who had delivered humanity's induction speech years earlier, stepped forward for the first time since the crisis began. He looked pale, fatigued, nothing like the casual creature who once shrugged away the secret of an artificial sun. The room turned toward him with a mixture of fear and barely contained fury. We didn't build them, Smith said. We found them. The silence that followed was denser than a star's core. Vales's 4 eyes narrowed. You claimed you built them. Your initial message to our survey team said you never asked about your second son. Smith shook his head slowly. The message was poorly translated. We said we lit them, not that we built them, they were already there. The revelation rippled through the chamber. The entire premise, the casual human arrogance, the colossal engineering feat that had shaken the galaxy, was built on a misunderstanding. Humanity didn't build a sun, they found a cage, and they had lit the fires inside it to keep something asleep. The speaker's voice came again, quieter now. "Delegate Smith, what is inside those containment stars?" Smith looked at the floor. Then back up directly at the speaker. "We call it the hunger. It's older than life on Earth, older than most stars. It was buried in our system when the first single-celled organisms on our planet were still learning to divide, and it's been screaming in the dark ever since." Dr. Valey's demanded telemetry data immediately. Smith transmitted a compressed archive from Earth's secure archives. The Coalition's central computer began unspooling the contents onto the main holographic display. Thousands of years of records, radiation fluctuations, ancient seismic readings from the ocean floor, spectral anomalies dating back to humanity's first radio telescopes. The data painted a terrifying picture. The hunger was not an organism. It was not a weapon, not a civilization, not any category the Coalition's taxonomy could accommodate. It was a field, a consciousness, that fed on thermal energy, and it had slumbered beneath Earth's crust for nearly 1 billion years, slowly, patiently, absorbing the heat of the planet's core. When humanity's ancestors first lit campfires, the hunger stirred. When they built their first cities, it turned its attention upward. By the time they split the atom, it had begun to reach for the surface. Earth's scientists discovered the entity in the late 21st century, just as climate collapse was accelerating. Their solution was not to fight it. They had no weapon that could harm something made of pure thermodynamic will, but to bait it. They drilled deep into the mantle, created a channel of superheated plasma, and lured the hunger upward. Then they launched it into space. But you can't kill something that feeds on heat. You can only trap it. So humanity built the first artificial star, a perfect, stable, infinitely hot fusion prison, and shoved the hunger inside. And it worked for a while. The problem was containment. The hunger never stopped growing. It absorbed the star's energy, expanded, pressed against its boundaries. Humanity built more containment stars, scattered them across their colonies, each one designed to split the entity's attention across multiple prisons. A distributed cage, a desperate temporary measure. And now, after centuries of silent operation, every single one of those cages was reaching capacity. "What happens when they breach?" the speaker asked, voice now barely a whisper. Smith's reply was flat. "The hunger recombines, all of it. Every fragment across every containment star snaps back together instantly. And it will be much, much hungrier than it was when we first found it. It will consume the nearest star, then the next, then everything with heat in this arm of the galaxy." The chamber descended into chaos. But in the corner of the room, a solitary figure remained perfectly still. The VAR delegate Axion, son of the Emperor. He had not spoken since the crisis began. Now he rose, and the deep rumble of his voice cut through the noise. "Long ago," Axion said, "my people faced a similar threat, a predator that fed on the energy of our world. We survived because we embraced what we are. We fought it with everything we had, with fire, with steel, with the very bones of our ancestors, and we won." He turned to face Smith directly, his massive reptilian frame looming over the human delegate. "Tell me, human, if you knew this thing would one day awaken and devour the galaxy, why didn't you ask for help? Why keep it a secret?" Smith met his eyes without flinching. "Because we weren't sure you would believe us, and because we were terrified that if you did, you'd try to negotiate with it." He paused, "But mostly we were afraid you'd try to kill it, and we needed it alive." The room froze. Valey's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Why would you need such a thing alive?" Smith exhaled. "Because the hunger isn't just a threat, it's a warning. It came from outside this galaxy, and it was running from something worse." The chamber was no longer silent. The air itself seemed to buzz with the weight of Smith's words. Something worse. The delegates, who moments earlier had been calculating evacuation plans for a hungry stellar entity, now faced the prospect that even that nightmare was a footnote. Axion, the VAR delegate, was the first to speak. His voice, usually a low rumble, had dropped to something closer to a growl. Explain. What could possibly make a creature that devours stars run? Smith took a deep breath. He called up a new data stream onto the hollow. It was a redshifted spectral image, something from deep intergalactic space, far beyond the Milky Way's halo. The data was ancient, captured by Earth's earliest deep-field observatories before they had even made contact with the Coalition. But the pattern it showed was unmistakable. A wave. A cold, dark wave, moving toward the local group at a fraction below light speed. And at its heart, a negative thermal signature. A hunger for heat so absolute that it didn't just absorb energy, it erased it. Where the hunger was a fire seeking fuel, this was a void, an absence, and it was broadcasting a signal. The hunger didn't flee randomly, Smith said. It was herded. Something pushed it out of its home galaxy, something that eats things like the hunger for breakfast. We call it the cold. Dr. Valey stepped closer to the display, his limbs trembling. This signature, it's not just a void, it's a coherent intelligence, a predator that extinguishes stars to starve its prey. And it's still coming, Smith nodded. It's been tracking the hunger for millions of years. The hunger's prison stars, our containment cages, they've been masking its signal, absorbing the heat and re-radiating it in a scrambled pattern. It was a perfect cage and a perfect cloak. But now that the cages are failing, the hunger's true signal is bleeding through again, and the cold is adjusting course. He paused, letting the implication sink in. We have months, not years. When the first cage breaches, the hunger will scream. That scream will travel across the void faster than light through a subspace feedback loop we don't fully understand, and the cold will hear it. It will lock on, and it will arrive within hours. The speaker, her calm shattered, asked the question everyone was thinking. Is there anything we can do? Smith looked at Axion, then at Valey's, then back at the council. We have a weapon, a prototype. We've been building it for 200 years, cannibalizing our own colonies, siphoning resources in secret. It's not designed to kill the hunger, it's designed to cage the cold. Axion's eyes widened. You plan to capture the larger predator. We plan to capture both. Smith's voice hardened. The hunger was bait. We've been feeding it, keeping it alive, because we knew if we could bait the cold into our galaxy, we could trap them both in a single cage. A perfect containment, like two black holes orbiting each other, canceling each other's radiance. But we ran out of time. We need to finish the weapon, deploy it around the Sol cage before it breaches, and trigger the trap the moment the cold arrives. And if it fails? Axion asked. Smith met his gaze without flinching. Then the cold gets a free meal, and after it eats the hunger, it turns on every star in the galaxy. We don't have a backup plan. The hollow shifted again, showing a schematic of a massive structure, an array of particle accelerators and gravity wells, disassembled, scattered across human colony worlds. The pieces were ready. All they needed was the power to assemble them, power that only a united coalition fleet could provide. Smith spoke one final time. We never asked for help because we thought the galaxy would stop us, that you try to negotiate with the cold or destroy the hunger or simply run. But we don't have the luxury of fear anymore. Help us finish the weapon, or watch everything you've ever known turn cold. The weapon held. 18 seconds of unified fleet power, and the cold shattered into a trillion frozen shards, each one dragged screaming into the twin event horizons of the hunger's cage. For the first time in a billion years, the galaxy breathed without a predator watching from the dark. The council's celebration was genuine but brief. In the aftermath, Delegate Smith stood before them one final time, a data file in his hand. He didn't smile. This is everything we know about the civilization that built the original cage around the hunger, he said. They were older than our sun. They mastered physics we still can't understand. And they were wiped out by something that makes the cold look like a candle flame. The speaker's voice came out as barely a whisper. How many more threats are out there? Smith shrugged. The same human shrug that started this entire crisis, but this time it carried the weight of centuries. We don't know, but we're already building the next cage, and the one after that. We've been doing this for a long time. Next time we might actually ask for help. That's what sticks with you after all the data clears. Humanity didn't build a second sun out of arrogance. They built it because they had to. And they didn't tell the galaxy not from indifference, but because they didn't want to burden anyone else with the terror of knowing what was coming. The coalition star charts have been updated. Every system with a human colony now carries a warning: artificial star present, do not approach. But the new charts also carry something else. A symbol no one remembers adding. A question mark, deep in the void between galaxies, faint, pulsing, watching. And so you're left with the question that started it all. If humanity could hide a sun, if they could cage a nightmare and plan a trap spanning centuries, what else is out there that we still haven't found? And when we do, will we be ready? If you want to be there when we find out, subscribe. We bring the unknown every week. Thanks for watching.